I guess first thing is first, which is I'm using a very awkward setup at the moment. This comes from preventions of me putting out my voice like this or something, whatever. Filters. I prefer the black and white filter. It's what I like. No one is forced to watch, so your opinion on the black and white filter or why I use it, blah blah blah, whether there's something behind it. No, I just like it. So get used to it. Let me apply my filter. I like my filter. Why, thank you. Anyway, let me try to turn the camera toward my face. Thank you. Clumsy. Whatever. So, Africa. I'm saying Africa because of a lot of youth that have been speaking on Africa, wondering about Africa. Have I abandoned the notion of Africa? Forgetting I'm not paid to do this, I'm not obliged to do this, and most of the time I get harassed, intimidated because I do this, because I have done this, and a lot is done to prevent me from doing this. I don't know why. I don't see the fuss of someone expressing their ideas or documenting their ideas, even if it means I share it with other people. I love my fan. Do you mind if I turn my fan on? Makes noise. Can I be heard? Would know. Anyway, Africa and us as young Africans, we are marginalized and we are oppressed. The notion of the youth is the future is only political rhetoric in Africa. Politics is supposed to be the cornerstone, or government is supposed to be the cornerstone of civil society. And please hear that word, civil society. And most societies are very civil. In Africa, African societies are very civil due to their traditions, but there is a slight inconsistency that tradition brings in, and this is that in the traditional sense across Africa, the leadership are the Alpha and Omega. In the modern world, in the modern sense, we all know that everybody falls under the rule of law. Right? That's what we all prefer. Now, Africa seems to be stagnant, and people keep asking why. And most people keep looking at technology. Technology. Yes, technology is the answer because it unites young people together. That's information redistribution. It brings the voices of young people together so that they can hear themselves and speak about our future as the so-called elders don't want to listen to our ideas, or feel that we are not experienced enough in life. Now, I have had a lot of trauma in my life. I don't want to bask in that stuff or cry about it or something like that. It is what it is. But what I want to say is, actually, let me put it in this context. The West, as they call it, gained power over our planet by way of capitalism. Capitalism, money. So, what is power to the West? It's money. Money means power. That's why their democracy seems to be fledgling sometimes, and seems to be fledgling at the moment, and needs some sort of transformation, because power is influence, and the influence in the West is money in terms of leadership. Right? There is a concept of, if you want to get something done, you better pay. What we called Ubuntu, or what they call Ubuntu, most people use the South African word Ubuntu, but there is a universal word that is used among all African dialects, which basically says the same thing. And there is another saying in my mother's language, in my father's language, Thimbukushu, Muntu Mudona. It means a person is bad, but don't translate it loosely. What it means is a person can be bad when they feel threatened. Now, in the Western perspective, they would feel threatened when they feel that their money or their wealth is under threat. You understand? That's when they react. In Africa, they feel threatened when they see that they are losing the trust of the people, or the trust within their parties. In the West, it ends up to them lobbying by way of funding a lot of money to try and manipulate the political system, to sort of rig it. This is well known all over. Politicians, a lot of politicians, even in the West, are fed up with this, sick and tired. Because you can have a wealthy person donate to a campaign because they believe in a candidate, and you can have a wealthy person that is looking for a puppet. This all depends on the candidate. Who does the candidate take money from, and what transparency do they give? In Africa, when they feel threatened, they can only resort to one thing, and this one thing derives from the fact that African leaders, most of them, have been colonial fighters. So what do? They intimidate people. They use threats. They will try to put you in debt, unnecessary debt that might not be yours. They will mess with you psychologically. Everything they can to bring you down, because you appear to be a threat. And mostly it is physical. They try to use the fact that they have some form of military might to fight off a democratic threat that they feel might overtake them. And this we witnessed. It was witnessed by everybody. I am a personal victim of this kind of intimidation, where they think they can point guns at you and you are supposed to keep your mouth shut. Luckily, most of African soldiers youth, and they don't want to shoot their fellow Africans. In fact, a lot of hitmen are trying to turn away from that life. Why? Simple. Because we are trying to move forward. But we cannot move forward if we all don't accept the facts. And the facts are not that power corrupts, but corrupted minds are easy to manipulate. That means the people that got you into power can easily manipulate you. This was the case in Zimbabwe until Mugabe until Mugabe faced backlash from his own people. He was so scared, he had to make an ultimatum. He panicked. That's what happened. He was under a lot of pressure. The administration was under a lot of pressure. They were fearing the West might attack. They were fearing all sorts, that since the Zimbabweans were beginning to arm themselves, that there will be civil unrest. They were fearing that they would end up dead. So they decided, okay, let's just say yes to this one thing. So they came to pressure. They could not have dialogue or some form of political dialogue with the people because they are not used to responding with political dialogue to try and resolve matters, and they are not used to trying to come to conclusions of situations based on democratic values. Mugabe called white people pigs. He said they have pig noses. It's quite funny, but very irresponsible to say they have pig noses when he's saying this because Putin said if the West tries to attack, he will protect Zimbabwe. So he's forgetting Putin is also white. So I don't know. Anyway, enough about Zimbabwe. That's their own issue. As a man, I do respect Mugabe's accomplishments, but his time has long gone, and I know this because I know who is actually running the country, who is actually making the decisions in the country, and I know how their political system is set up at the moment, and it is a desperate one, as it is across Africa. As the world transforms, the world is transforming, it's transitioning, and when it's transitioning, what is happening is, in the West, capital is no longer as influential as it used to be. This is being noticed. And here in Africa, intimidation, threats are no longer as effective as they used to be. So now we are moving towards the stage of global dialogue based on people who want to live their lives, have a family, live in peace. I'm one of them. I wanna raise a kid, work really hard, just live a comfortable, normal, loving life. But this is the generation that has to bear for the future. So every step I make, I have to plan. And this is why I make it public for all. And I salute all of the young people who a lot of people are saying and claiming I am poisoning, who are actually listening and saying, you know what, this is true. We can take ownership and accountability of things ourselves. This is the citizen voice, and this citizen voice is what is changing the influences as they used to be, changing them toward a more humanistic direction. I have seen people being poisoned against me, and they only realize it late. By that time, they've obviously, lost my trust, but not my favor. Even if I don't like someone, even if I don't trust someone, does not mean that if they ask me for help, I won't try in some meager way to try and help as I can. I do in my meager way. With all the shade and insults, I do. And the people that feel being materialistically above others or something, let me tell you this. There was a time that the private part of our country wanted me to start a political party. I'm talking about the people who are richer than any political party in existence, who are willing to back up that initiative. Right? Because they wanted justice as well, equality as well, especially a future where we all thrive. Now, I did not go along with this because, number one, I don't think I'm ready for that, or didn't think I was ready for that. Number two, I don't feel like a quick solution is a fix towards something. The notion that if there is a problem, run and start a political party and go and contest people in parliament is the only answer is wrong. I believe in community development. I believe in people helping other people. I've always been like that. I've always thought like that, seeing that capacity of people. I have a friend who's trying to say I'm a liar, that I say this but I don't mean it. But there are many people who I have had some sort of impact on, as meager as it is, who do not believe that fool. And I really don't care for his opinion. As of now, I am saying it. I just want to make that clear. That person is nowhere near me in my life. He knows who he is. He is a fake friend. A friend I confided in, who spat on me. Who did not think that I would have allies and friends who would be loyal, who would see through the defamation. And that is the Africa that we are trying to create, a progressive Africa that is not afraid of progress, but a patient Africa. That means not being afraid to ask for help, not being afraid to join hands. A united front is always stronger, but it has to be a realistic united front. For you to have a realistic united front, you need to have universal pillars. At the moment, the universal pillars are job, security, meaningful jobs, pension, housing and shelter, and most importantly, education. Education is giving someone a set of skills, but the cost of skill development has gone up, and people forget that education used to be only for the privileged. Only for the privileged. And now education is at the lower level for all, but much more progressive education is for a few. But that education that people look down on only needs transformation, and that is 2016. That is the draft. It is about how to manage being a teacher who has disinterested students or learners, who is stressed out by problems at home and salary and housing and so forth, and at the same time has to educate. So striking a balance there, bringing air there, bringing water there is very important. That sense of fear that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you work, you won't get anywhere, because there are always roadblocks and people who don't want others to succeed, based on the premise that they will be outworked. This is not a motivational perspective. This is the reality in Africa. And a lot of people who have supposedly built successful businesses are very guilty of this. They are very guilty of feeling that, oh my, I might lose it all. It's that African saying, it's that Christian saying, Catholic saying, I think, that a poor man sleeps peacefully at night, while a rich man stays awake at night counting his money. You understand? But in this case, it is the poor man that stays up trying to make money, while the rich man sleeps as the poor one makes money for him. How can this be changed? How can Africa come out of this grave of the past? And that is by forcing what is perceived as the future, or moving too fast. We have to move as though there is an emergency. I would love to be in a town hall meeting and speak to people and rally and speak to people, but I decided to use proxies, other people that people would find more appealing and more, I guess, tribally attractive to them, or politically attractive to them, in order for them to hear the message. That's what it's about. I am not a priest, I am not a prophet, I am not a seer or anything. But I am a concerned citizen, also for myself. You understand? I want my kids, as my father before me wants me, to inherit hard work of my labor, not to inherit more labor. So working overtime or overworking or whatever, maybe, but I think it's very important Because the more we are all empowered by information as well as insight, the better it is for all of us. They call it a united front. It doesn't mean people have to like each other. No. It means people should not try. People should not try to be opportunistic. We all want to be opportunistic. We all want to get there very, very, very fast. But that's not how it works. And I know the times are dire. And in dire times, desperation grows higher. But learning that curve, trying to learn that curve of when it's really bad, just stopping and saying, wait, right, let me just wait for the storm to come. When the storm is calm, you can set sail again. So I have not spoken on Africa because the youth understand the way forward, while our older generation don't want that push factor. No, and it's one of Africa's traditional laws and flaws that comes in play into rule of law, which completely dismantles it, which is that if you are young, you should be a subordinate to someone who is older than you because they are older than you. Not because they are more capable, but just because they are older than you. So, like someone said, so this means you have to wait until you are near retirement in order for you to give out your voice, in order for you to be an influential citizen. That traditional aspect, like Nelson Mandela said, it, and I think Thabo Mbeki also said it. Tradition is bad for Africa because it is not as diverse as we claim. What is diverse are dialects. We prefer, or the older generation prefer, tradition to culture. That's what leads to stagnation. Young people become frustrated, and the older generation don't trust the younger generation. And of course, this is something that some say is because of today's media, things that people see on TV. They want to be like what they see on TV. They are materialistic and so forth, and it is all true because there are no proper initiatives in place to preoccupy the youth with inventing their own future. The older generation is trying to invent the future for the youth without listening to them. The older generation has memories of war. The youth have nightmares of abject poverty. Do you see that? How that is very different. The youth want peace. Give you an example of Namibia. How many gangs are in Namibia? Almost zero. And this is not taken as a success. And this is proof that the so-called media or gangsterism of rap and things is turning the youth into followers of entertainment rhetoric. I believe if that is the case, then use that same platform to try and inform the youth at the same time. There was a time someone said, yeah, that person just talks, he knows how to talk very well, nice speaker, but never actually plans, never actually does. But if you knew the realities of the obstacles in the way of planning and implementation, you would think differently. And it's in the head hallucination nonsense. It does not fly. The youth don't buy it, and neither do most citizens, middle-aged citizens and older citizens. They are not buying it anymore. Why? Because people are tired of being numbers. Let's say you are a customer. Look at the brands that attract a lot of wealthy customers, for example. What do they provide? They provide something very valuable. They provide a beautiful experience. So if you have a beautiful experience within your country, then obviously your country is moving forward. But if it's only tourists that come and have a beautiful experience in your country, while the occupants of the country don't experience that goodness, then where is it exactly? Where is it hiding? It's all about patience. I am an impatient person, and I'm saying this too. Yes, there are plans, but are these plans being made public to the people? And what are the people's opinions? And if the people's opinions are not informed, then why aren't these so-called plans being made simplistic enough so that a lot of people can understand them? We have a lot of linguists in our country. Why are they not utilized to inform those who don't understand English? Vir die mense wat die Afrikaans kan praat die? Want waar apil kuyu ngarwingilsa? You see? So language can no longer be a barrier. Language has been a barrier of people for too long. In fact, language is the creator of tribes. And I think for those who have done this research, by some they are not called philanthropists. Anyway, if you have done this type of research, it is quite hefty. But if you have done this research, then you would know that, for example, when the Bantu trekked from West Africa, as they came down into Southern Africa, they started to go their separate ways, and within a few generations they had developed languages that are the same but different from certain words. I can give you an example of how English changed. The English of the Shakespearean era is not the same as the English of today. American English is a bit different from British English. So tribes derive from language. And language shouldn't be a barrier. That is why I have always said that Namibia made a very wise choice to choose English, not because a lot of people are not fluent in English, as I'm told most, actually, because we are a former South African colony, you understand Afrikaans, but because most people would understand each other, and resolving conflicts is done when people understand each other. Common ground. After all the fights, everybody must go and think. As someone who gets blamed for a lot of things, who has been blamed for a lot of things, I have discovered that a lot of people who claim superiority, who claim some form of influence, a lot of these people, when they realize that they can and they have it, try to use it to their advantage first, and to develop cronies. And this is not progressive, and this is Africa. Look at the AU. People speak of the UN. As far as I know, the UN has brought peace to a lot of countries in Africa. A lot of African countries look to the UN. And today the UN is the enemy. Why is the UN an enemy? Because the UN is threatening the power of some. And like I said in the beginning, in Africa, when power is threatened, they try to fight back using defamation or whatever tool they have at their disposal to cling on to what they have. Look at how people are easily manipulated. By the notion that there is a land of honey, and if they just go to this land of honey, everything will work out. While in truth, we are all bees that have to collect honey to take back to the hive. But if you have bees that don't cooperate, how much honey will be produced? I'm no expert. I have claimed no title, and I am not speaking against anyone in this. I mentioned Robert Mugabe because it was, I think, the right example to use in terms of how political perspective changes its dynamics when they feel threatened. And why? If citizens have to own up for injustices, so do leaders. And if we are that if I am that delusional, right? If I am that unrealistic, then why do things transpire the way they do? And here's one more thing. We have a tendency of quoting history, of learning history, of not creating based on the present and the future, planning for the future. There is this sense of fear for plans made for the people, by the people, for their futures as well as their present. This is completely backward thinking, because if we speak based on the narratives or the narrative of the past, then obviously our thought process is still in the past. I always try to reiterate that I always try to speak based on what I experienced within my own lifetime, what I have researched or read within my own lifetime, because it is this lifetime that matters at the moment. You can honor the work done by many in the past, but you should not live every day of your life at the altar of the past. It's corrosive, and we are called developing nations because our narrative is based on the past most of the time. Like who said, as was stated by, this is said. Those should be short references, not guidelines. They are not guidelines. If they were good guidelines, why did they not work then? And most would say no, because people were not listening, because there were lots of people that were against it. It was too ahead of its time. No, I don't think that is the reason. I think the reason is history keeps repeating itself. It keeps recycling. Because we don't seek alternatives. We are always afraid of each other. If we are afraid of each other, then with whom will we feel safe? If we intimidate each other, then how can it not be that some would seek refuge elsewhere. To say this is moving too fast is to indirectly admit we do not understand and do not know how we can use what we have efficient and effectively enough to capacitate a certain objective. For example, we know very well that communal farming has remained the same for a very long time in Africa because of tradition and because of lack of interest due to supermarkets. Simple. As importers, you are taking out of your wallet. When you import anything, you are taking out of your wallet. How can that be an effective system? And to say that it is wrong to say Africa wants to develop policies so that their land, which is where their mines are, works to the advantage of the African citizen first, is dangerous, because the so-called investor overseas will pull out, and the capacity of the Africans, will not be sufficient enough for Africans to run these very mining projects and so forth. This is a complete lie. And this is based on the fact that the West, which uses capital as influence, uses the same principle on Africa. I'm not saying the West is bad, but they have Western interest, and Africa does not have African interest. If you do not have African interest, or if your African interests are based on tradition, and history, then those are not interests worth holding on to. I said it before, if we enrich our own people, or if our own people are enriching themselves, if we have our own billionaires, millionaires, and I'm talking about the legitimate ones, not the frauds, then what would be so wrong about that? Would it not empower the rest of the people? I'm not speaking of those who succeed off of the labor of others. I'm speaking of those who create institutions that are so successful that some accuse them of witchcraft, some sort of juju in order for them to attain what they have attained, and not because they break barriers, because they work hard, because they look where others are not looking. This is the generation where we must bear. Globally, we must bear. The world is heading towards peace, but such a transition has opposition. I have been asked, why do you not speak on Africa? This is why I'm saying it today. Because I was asked today, why don't you speak on Africa? African development. Is it only the leaders that are at fault? I don't think so. Because you don't have to be a politician to be a leader. We have church leaders. We have business leaders. We have leaders in civil institutions. They are also leaders. And they should also act as leaders. We cannot just blame political leaders. All leaders must be held to account. If you want to lead, you also have to bear. You have to bear the heavy burden of failure. Failure is a learning curve. That's what I have discovered. And there are many ways to educate people, or to get people to be interested in education, including the educators who lose hope. And this is by securing or making sure they know that they are secured by their leaders. Be it the principal must ensure that his teachers feel secure at his school. And the principal must be a leader at his school, not only to the learners, but to the teachers. The principal must be the leader that assesses the teachers' performances. Why are your students doing badly? Instead of calling in the parents and saying your child is doing badly, the teacher should also be held accountable. Why are you doing so badly? And if it's the child's problem, okay, this child has a problem. What is this problem? And how can this child's guardians, who happen to be the teachers and the principal, help this particular student also? The cases where you hear of students, or especially young learners, engaging in sexual behavior with their teachers, it's very, very, very sad. And that is on the principal. The SRCs, why do SRCs exist? So that they can help the teachers see what they don't see, And then the teachers can help the principal see what he doesn't see. That is delegation. They are leaders in different forms, not only political leaders. So why haven't I spoken on Africa? Because I'm not holding my breath. Why? Because a lot of us don't want to bear for the next generation. Glory is more important to some than the victory of many. And I prefer making videos of this. Because I don't want to put when you put it in writing, as general as it might be, as let's just say I will gradually start to do that again. But as a human being, and from what I observe, I'm also doing my own introspection even as I speak. I'm not excluding myself. I'm not saying no, me, I know better. I'm an illiterate in many departments. Why did I say I am an Ivy League professor? This was because I was speaking on behalf of why we only look at education in one dimension. There is this sense that this person is argumentative, but never is there a sense that this person is a very curious person who wants to learn. How do you empower yourself? You learn. And a lot of times I will purposely speak down on someone to assess their own confidence in what they are doing. If you are very confident about something that you are doing, and I say you are useless, you don't know what you are doing, my words, the words of an illiterate, won't matter, because you know what you are doing and you are confident in your own potential and your own skill. But why the insecurities? That is it. Africa is insecure. We have every reason to be in self-defense mode because of constant attacks, unnecessary monitoring. For example, let me give you an example. I retweet someone's tweet, and out of everybody that does it, or let's say I say something good about someone, out of everybody that said it, I get singled out. So of course I become more cautious. I learn. Then I learn, oh, So when I do this, people claim favoritism. Same people claiming favoritism don't want to engage. I also want to learn. I am also learning. But I will not be taught by being dictated or controlled. By being told, this should be your future, not that. By being told that my vision is meaningless despite the visions that have been accomplished. I am not a man who lives for credit, never have been. But I do want validation. Why? I want to know when I'm wrong. But I can also see when someone is being sarcastic. If you're being sarcastic towards me, I will be very sarcastic towards you. I'm very good at this. Right? So what sort of validation do I want? Am I right on a certain point? Or am I wrong? I don't set out to prove other people wrong. No. I try to gain wisdom. And we should all try to gain wisdom. Wisdom with information and education leads to a sense of fulfillment. When I was being called poor, dirty, smelly, and all of those things, I was not angered by such remarks. Never. What angered me was the fact that this poor, dirty, smelly person is relevant enough to be defamed, spat on, and kicked around. And it is within my human right to set course for justice, to make it right. Justice. We all have different perspectives because we all have grown up in different environments. I grew up in an environment where we were very, very poor at some point, as my parents talked about. I was not born with a bloody silver spoon in my mouth. Set the royalty thing aside. My father refused it. Yes, I was taken care of. But at the same time, hard work, perseverance, passion, compassion taken away. Why? Because I was at Panarotis. I should feel guilty for being at Panarotis. And people ask why I don't speak of Africa. There was a boy who broke into our house. I went to his family's house, and I could see why he did it. I have seen poverty firsthand. I have no barriers. I have no class system. Simple. Am I talking to myself? Of course. I'm reflecting my thoughts. What is more important? What is more important than trying to validate what you have learned? What is more important? So no. For example, when I was very ill, sick, right, and I could not cope. I had a lot of responsibilities. And I still have a lot of responsibilities to an extent. I get labeled for that. When I try to stand up for gay people, I got called gay, yada yada yada. So be it. Why? Because through these trials I learn. When I was denied access due to my circumstances to the same lifestyle as other children had of my age, going to varsity, having that freedom, I took it upon myself to educate myself. And that's why I don't feel like I need validation. And that is how I see it forward. I see it forward. In different dimensions. Why do I see it forward in different dimensions? Because we are diverse people. For example, poverty eradication. Is it poverty eradication or unemployment eradication, as well as the creation of meaningful jobs? Because there is abject poverty that most people would laugh at, and you should see how these people live. When it's hot, it is very hot. When it's cold, it is very cold. So yes, I said it. If someone has land, they can create a plan where they use corrugated iron as well as cement and sand. Around the structures to prevent this. There are many methods that can be used to build. As we have noticed, The way that we build today is very expensive. People do not need land. People need diversity of shelter. Building houses in the same fashion that they were built in 1910 and 1930 or beyond. It's not effective, it's not efficient. And that is why a lot of people cannot afford it. And there are different adhesives. Imagine in the villages people use cow dung. Cow dung on their buildings as an adhesive, and it comes out fine. Making bricks, people making their own bricks. Or government establishing brick making in order to bring down the price of the cost of building houses or homes. Why do people tend to gain culture? Because of tradition. Because of financial stress. Do what you gotta do. This is clear especially when you look at rappers. They rap about everything. They would call women all sorts of derogative things, have half naked and naked women within their videos, whatever it takes for them to take bread at home. So the pillars that need to be strengthened are many. Gender-based violence. Is too shallow. Because, let me speak out of experience and what I have been told by people that I chatted with. Emotional pain can be more hurtful than physical pain. So are there people that are suffering in silence? Of course. And this pressure, this stress, this is violence. Losing your mind and going out of control and maybe beating up someone, your girlfriend or your spouse, all relates to how you feel you are treated. Some people act out when they feel they are not loved. It's not one-dimensional. Gender-based violence is male and female. With women, it is mostly psychological abuse. They abuse men psychologically to the brink where you get suicides. Let's not forget the high rate of suicides from young boys and men within Namibia. Why are those not accounted for? Because suicide is stupid. How is that different from someone that kills their spouse? Someone that kills their spouse psychologically. there are many angles, and all angles need to be covered. We cannot change the dynamics of society if we give up. If you give up, then you give up. I feel despondent sometimes, I know, but I don't give up. I try not to. Why? Because of the burden. And let us not forget that a lot of families are broken. Let's speak of people who suffer from gender-based violence. How do their extended family members view this? How do they see this? How do they feel? That's my think.